This is Art Television.
Coming up, State of Business, sponsored by
Manage all your SLT Mobitel services through the MySLT app.
IWS Aviation.
Good evening and welcome to the State of Business on Art Television. I am Chavika Samarasinghe. Let's have a look at the headlines. Opposition champions independent and empowered bribery and corruption office. Tourism sector feels the pinch of the electricity tariff. News in detail. Opposition legislator Eran Vikramaratne suggests that the official investigating bribery and corruption should be independent enough to investigate politicians and high-ranking officials. This would transform the office into one trusted by the general public. SJB parliamentarian Vikramaratne voiced this suggestion during the three-day debate to discuss President Ranil Wickremesinghe's policy statement.
It is essential to completely eliminate bribery, corruption and fraud from our society. I will implement a national policy to combat bribery and corruption. New rules, regulations and orders in this regard are being prepared by the Ministry of Justice. A consensus will be reached with the International Monetary Fund regarding combating of corruption. My plea is this is there. What we need to do is actually bring it to the forefront. We can't put a statement. This agenda is not the International Monetary Fund's agenda. This should be our agenda. We have had protesters in this country for months. This is the only country in the world that the chief executive, the president of the country, had to vacate and flee the country because of protesters. This is not a normal situation. This can recur if we collectively as a parliament don't take the right steps. What's the problem? Opposition and government could get together. We could work on anti-corruption measures. Let's not go to the place because the public have a feeling that we are protecting each other. We shouldn't be doing that. We are there to protect the public. We have come to do public service. And therefore, I'm calling upon the government to quickly bring the new Seabok law, because that law makes Seabok independent. In 28 years of Seabok, we haven't had a single prominent politician or official being convicted. We must make assets and liabilities publicly available so that they could be audited. If there is a necessity, they could be audited. We need to have an independent prosecutor's office, chief prosecutor's office. But at a minimum, I would say that we need to have at least an independent bribery prosecutor's office, anti-corruption bribery prosecutor's office. That's a minimum that we could do.
Transshipment container volumes at the port of Colombo in June fell due to political and social unrest during the period. These factors had raised law and order concerns among main shipping lines, which moved to alternative routes to avoid the port of Colombo. In June, container transshipment volumes declined 4.5% year-on-year to 483,070 TEUs, even though the Sri Lanka Port Authority stressed that operations at the Colombo port remained intact with uninterrupted fuel supply. Further, the events on the 9th of July, which saw the storming of the official residences of the President and the Prime Minister, escalated concerns on law and order among the main shipping lines. During the first half of the year, transshipment container volumes increased 1% year-on-year to 2.89 million TEUs. Up to July, several South Indian ports, including Kochi International Container Transshipment Terminal, have experienced a sizable surge in traffic. Meanwhile, Commissioner General of the Excise Department of Sri Lanka, M.J. Gunusiri, says that while sales were disrupted this year due to local and global factors, Sri Lanka hopes to earn around $50 million in export revenue of locally made liquor in 2023. According to him, Sri Lanka earned around $25 million on overseas sales of Sri Lankan liquor last year. The department has also decided to introduce quality control on local coconut and palmyra toddy, which in turn will help add these products to the local export basket as well. He also revealed that the department has commenced work on building a testing and quality control laboratory, which will enable the department to enhance the quality of toddy. Through these measures, the department hopes to bring around $50 million in revenue from the sale of locally made spirits next year. Sri Lankan liquor is currently exported to 34 countries. The lion's share of this revenue comes from the sale of beer. Sri Lanka's hospitality sector recently said that the electricity tariff hike would further hurt the sector, as it is not in a position to bear further pressure with reduced revenue earnings at present. The hospitality sector has repeatedly been called upon to step up to generate higher foreign exchange to help uplift the economy. The sector is barely managing to stay afloat as tourist arrivals continue to remain low. President of the Hotels Association of Sri Lanka, M. Shantikumar, speaking to local media, pointed out that hotels are charged under the super tariff category for electricity payments. He stressed that it is unfair to expect the sector to pay higher bills, given diminished revenue levels. Shantikumar said that it is imperative for relevant authorities to consider placing the sector under the industries category. The sector has been advocating this even before the crisis struck. Shantikumar went on to share that representations have been made to the Prime Minister and the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority to look at placing hotels in the lower tariff category permanently. The hotel category will see an electricity tariff hike of about 80%, as per the new structure approved by the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka this week. However, the utilities regulator said hotels adversely affected by issues in the country are allowed to merge with the general purpose category, where the overall tariff increase was less. Further, the PUCSL in its announcement said that considering the difficult business environment faced by hotels category consumers, the tariff for the category will be implemented in 2 stages. 50% of the increase came into effect from the 10th of August 2022, and the balance will come into effect from the 10th of November 2022. While hotels would take a hit from this month on, President of the Hotels Association of Sri Lanka said the sector welcomes and appreciates the grace period offered by the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka. Stay tuned. We will return after this commercial break.
Meet your work and learn targets. Get 30 GB Meet Lite for just 195 rupees and 100 GB Meet Max for 490 rupees. Log on to My SLT app to activate.
Welcome back. The United Nations Population Fund has launched an appeal for $10.7 million to cater to vulnerable groups. This effort is aimed at delivering life-saving healthcare to more than 2 million women and girls in Sri Lanka over the next 6 months. Sri Lanka's once robust healthcare system is teetering on the edge of collapse amid debilitating power shortages and a lack of critical supplies, equipment and medicine. The UNFPA acknowledged that this is severely impacting the delivery of sexual and reproductive health services, including maternal health care and access to contraception. The UN organ cautions that existing protection mechanisms for women and girls in need, including survivors of gender-based violence, have also been severely compromised. A UN survey in May 2022 indicates women and girls' vulnerability to violence is increasing, at the same time as services including health, police, shelter and hotlines are declining due to lack of financial resources to continue providing life-saving support. The UNFPA is providing cash and voucher assistance to pregnant women to support access to health facilities and continues to build the capacity and skills of the extensive midwifery force across the country. However, with infrastructure and transportation challenges, childbirth could be a life-threatening, if not fatal, experience for pregnant women unable to access skilled medical care, the agency said. As part of its appeal, some plans of the UNFPA are to distribute life-saving medicines, equipment and supplies, including for emergency and obstetric care and clinical management of rape and domestic violence, to meet the priority reproductive health needs of 1.2 million people. It will supply 10,000 delivery, maternity and dignity kits to women and girls in need, including persons living with disabilities. Provide more than 37,000 women with cash and voucher assistance to access life-saving reproductive health and protection services. Ensure 500,000 women receive information on warning signs during pregnancy and support 12,500 women with livelihood programming to reduce the risk of gender-based violence. The UNFPA's response is part of the Humanitarian Needs and Priorities Plan launched by the UN in Sri Lanka, which calls for $47 million to provide life-saving assistance to 1.7 million people between June and September 2022. An Institute for Policy Studies publication has identified the lack of relevant regulations and legislation governing the work-from-home practice as a key barrier to remote work in Sri Lanka. The publication, titled "Winners and Losers of Sri Lanka's Work-from-Home Policy," advocates legal reforms to facilitate the practice. The study notes that the Work-from-Home Convention of 1996, adopted by the International Labour Organization, can be a basis on which to reform domestic law. The authors hold that the legislation providing the legal framework for work and remuneration, such as the Shop and Office Act and the Wages Board's Ordinance, do not facilitate work from home. The authors, Suresh Ranasinghe and Dr. Nisha Arunatilaka, also call for increased investment in information and communications infrastructure, together with training and financial support for workers. However, workers in some occupations will find it challenging to work from home. As such, exploring means of supporting these workers is worthwhile to restore economic activity. The authors also stress that employee work hours, performance, digitization, communication, occupational safety and health, and work-life balance need attention in order to ensure employee well-being and continued productivity. Study shows that feasibility of work from home in Sri Lanka is generally balanced by age, yet it is significantly unbalanced by gender, educational attainment, income level, occupation, firm size, sector, and geographical location. Remote work has been identified as a possible long-term policy tool to enhance available employment opportunities and safeguard employment. Thus, it is essential to identify the pitfalls of the work-from-home policy in order to develop the practice to match Sri Lanka's unique labour context. All bids received for the 15 billion rupee 3-year maturity of 1st June 2025 were rejected at its auction held on Wednesday. According to Wealth Trust Securities, this is the first such instance since April 2022 where the bids on the 3-year maturity of 15th March 2025 were rejected. Only the 7-year maturity of 15th July 2029 drew successful bids of 16.96 billion rupees from its first and second phases at the auction, out of an offered amount of 20 billion rupees. The weighted average rate on the 15th July 2029 maturity registered at 26.91%. Meanwhile, activity in the secondary bond market on Wednesday remained at a standstill for a third consecutive day, while two-way quotes were seen reducing subsequent to the auction outcomes. The total secondary market treasury bond and bill transacted volume for 9th August 2022 was 54.18 billion rupees. In money markets, the weighted average rate on overnight repo stood at 15.5%, while the net liquidity deficit stood at 454.17 billion rupees on Wednesday. An amount of 297.63 billion rupees was deposited at the central bank's standing deposit facility rate of 14.5%, while an amount of 751.81 billion rupees was withdrawn at the central bank's standing lending facility rate of 15.5%. In the forex market, the middle rate for US dollar, Sri Lankan rupee spot contracts remained steady at 360.94 rupees on Wednesday. The total US dollar Sri Lankan rupee traded volume for 9th August 2022 was 19.17 million US dollars. Stay tuned for stock updates.
Manage all your SLT Mobitel services through the My SLT app.
More data, data when you stare and use more. Data Bow One, data Bow One.
A non-stop journey with Data Bow One from SLT Mobitel Home Broadband.
Trading at the Colombo Stock Exchange ended on positive notes today. The all-share price index gained 321.31 points to close at 9,027.48, and the S&P SL20 gained 143.05 points to close at 3,072.01. The turnover was 6.3 billion rupees and over 209 million shares were traded. Up next are forex rates. That's all our news for today. Take care and good night.
State of Business was sponsored by
Manage